There is a level of exuberance here, as I said in my note, that I think is not really well informed by the analysis of the data. So the driver here is really the stat article that came out yesterday. And, I love Adam and I love Matt, the authors of the article, and it's a great breaking news piece. But, one of the sayings that I'm fond of is stories are more persuasive than facts. And what you have here is a very seductive story in these anecdotes that you're seeing severe COVID patients who are treated with remdesivir surviving. And the number that they say is about 2% of the patients treated in the single center setting who have severe COVID are surviving. I think what most people think of as severe COVID is patients who have multiple comorbidities, maybe on mechanical ventilation, patients who have a high probability of death. My critique here is really, I do not think those are the patients that they're talking about. If you look at the study, it very specifically says that patients on mechanical ventilation are not allowed to be enrolled in the study. They have a number of other comorbidities that exclude patients from the study. So severe is really qualified by how much oxygen is in your blood. It's a pretty discreet, I wouldn't even characterize it as a very severe cutoff at 94%. Normal is considered 95%. So, I think the problem here is people read the article and they think there's this Lazarus effect of patients who are on death's door coming back from this drug. And I think the reality is the magnitude is not really there given what these patients are. A comparable study was run in China with a drug called Kaletra. It failed. But this severe patient population showed about 80% recovery at 28 days. So the vast majority of the patients in that study, which is also a study of not mechanically ventilated patients, did wind up recovering. So I would really caution against taking away too much from this anecdote.
Well, the reporter joined us last hour, and he did confirm that these patients were not on ventilators, but they were characterized as severely ill. I'm not sure why that matters so much, Brian. I mean, maybe the drug prevented them from having to be on ventilators and getting worse. Either way, the fact that anecdotally, sure, there was no control group and there was no placebo, but the fact that a vast majority of them got better should be very encouraging, shouldn't it?
Sure, but that's my point about the Kaletra study, Sarah, that 80% of the patients without any effective treatment recovered and got better in a very similar patient sample. So if 80% are recovering here, to say most of them are recovering in this study, it's hard to really define whether or not there is a drug effect.
Brian, if we talk about the numbers, the data that essentially these reporters got access to via this video clip. Typically, when you do the job you do every week with different stocks and different drugs, would you assign any weight to that level of data, even if it did suggest these people were on ventilators and it was having the effect, for example?
If the patients were mechanically ventilated, then only 2 out of 113 patients had passed on, I would find that very compelling. I think because these patients are not really at that level of severity, and we have examples where we have very high recovery rates of the patients that do have the characteristics of the patients that were enrolled in the study. It's hard to reach that conclusion. This is not a very far gone patient population. But certainly, if 80% of patients survived on this drug after mechanical ventilation, that would be a much more compelling data. That's just not what this is.